The earliest travelers through what would become the Oregon Trail were mountain men and fur traders during the years 1825 through 1840. They met at Rendezvous in western Wyoming, Green River Valley, Poco Aggie River, Wind River areas to trade furs, resupply, and socialize. In 1836, the first known wagon-bound expedition west was led by Marcus Whitman and Narcissa Whitman. They traveled to establish a mission near present-day Walla Walla, Washington. The mission ended tragically in 1847 when they and 10 others were killed by the Cayuse tribe in the Whitman Massacre. First organized wagon party with families started their journey in 1841. The Bartonson Bidwell Party left Independence, Missouri with around 80 pioneers helping to establish the California Trail. During the years of 1841 through 1869, between 300 and 500,000 pioneers traveled the roughly 2,170-mile Oregon Trail. They averaged 10 to 20 miles per day, taking between 4 and 6 months, typically leaving in April or May to avoid the winter snows in the Rocky Mountains. Approximately 20 to 30,000 people died along the Oregon Trail. The causes included disease, especially cholera, which was the leading cause, accidents, exposure, malnutrition, and conflicts with Native Americans, which was less common than the popular myth suggests. Estimates suggest that roughly 1 to 2 deaths per 100 travelers per 100 miles happened along the trail. In 1869, use of the trail sharply declined after the completion of the first transcontinental railroad, which made westward travel much faster and safer. A typical diary entry sounded something like this on the Oregon Trail. We rose before the sun again this morning, the sky pale and wide, as if it might swallow us whole. Mr. Jenkins called out at 4:30, and by 5 the oxen were being yoked. I helped Mother stir the coals and fry the last of yesterday's salt pork. The coffee was thin, but warm at least. We ate quickly, for there's little time for comfort on this trail. The wagons creaked forward just as the sun broke over the prairie. The sound of wooden wheels against the dry earth and steady clink of harness chains has become the music of our days. I walked beside our wagon nearly the whole way. Father says the oxen bear enough weight without us riding too. My shoes are wearing thin, and I fear they may not last to Oregon. The Platte runs beside us, still broad and shallow, though not so shallow as to be trusted. We passed a grave this afternoon, marked only by a wooden board bearing the name of a child. Cholera, they say. The sickness has followed many trains this season. Mother grows quiet whenever she sees a fresh mound of dirt. After supper, Mr. Carter played his fiddle. The tune was lively, though our dancing was slow from weariness. Even so, I felt my spirits lift. The prairie at dusk is beautiful beyond telling, golden and endless, with the sky so vast it humbles the heart. I confess I grow weary of the sameness, the walking, the dust, the fear of what lies ahead. Yet Father says each mile brings us closer to the land of our own. I try to picture it, a small house, apple trees, soil rich and dark. I pray the Lord grants that we reach it safely. The stars are bright tonight. I shall sleep beneath them and hope tomorrow. No sickness, no broken wheels. Fort Laramie stands on the wide, windswept plains of eastern Wyoming, where the Laramie River meets the North Platte. The sky above it feels enormous, an unbroken dome of blue by day and a blaze of stars by night. It was born of logs and trade, tempered by conflict and shaped by relentless movement of a nation pushing west. It began in 1834 as a fur trading post, Fort Williams, built by traders who came seeking beaver and pelts and profit. Back then, it was a rough-hewn and busy with trappers, traders, and Native American tribes who met here to exchange goods. It smelled of wood smoke, leather, and river mud. Over time, the name changed, and so did its purpose. By 1849, the U.S. Army came. Soldiers in blue uniforms marched across the parade grounds, their boots thudding against the earth. It became a key military post, guarding and supplying with thousands of immigrants traveling the Oregon, Mormon, and California trails. Wagon wheels creaked past in an endless line, families hopeful and anxious, chasing dreams of land and gold. Fort Laramie watched them rest beneath its walls, where those early pioneers mended their wagons and gathered courage before heading into the unknown. It also witnessed tension and broken promises. Treaties were signed here, most notably in 1851 and 1868, between the United States and various Plains tribes. The fort heard the words spoken in hopes of peace, yet those involved felt the strain beneath those words. Conflict swept across these plains, and it stood as both symbol and instrument of a changing frontier. Through the decades, the wooden structures gave way to adobe and stone. Officers' quarters, barracks, and storehouses. The buildings formed a small, orderly community against a vast wilderness. Bugle calls once echoed across these grounds at dawn and dusk. Children laughed here, too. It was not only a military outpost, but a home for families. By 1890, military service ended. The frontier had moved on, and the fort grew quiet. Wind replaced the bugle. Grass pushed up between its stones, yet it remains today as a symbol of growing nations, caught between two cultures and the dreams of many for a better life. The journey along the Oregon Trail was perilous. Death from disease was a grim but accepted reality. Accidents were common. Iron-tired wagon wheels could crush the unwary, and children were often orphaned by the deaths of their parents. One such child was Catherine Sagal Pringle. As a young girl traveling west with her parents and 6 siblings, Catherine suffered a crushed leg when she fell beneath a wagon. Her later memoirs she published called Across the Plains in 1844, she described the hardships that followed, including the illness and death of her parents.
After Fort Laramie, we entered the great American desert, which was hard on the teams. Sickness became common. Father and the boys were all sick, and we were dependent on someone to drive. A Dutch doctor who set my leg offered his services and was employed. Though an excellent surgeon, he knew little about driving oxen. Catherine Sager Pringle, 1844.
Just west of Fort Laramie, Mary Holmesley and her infant son fell ill with measles, then a dangerous and often deadly disease in early America. The epidemic had broken out among the wagon train, infecting many children and some adults. For several days, a feverish Mary and her baby rode atop a feather bed in one of their 2 wagons, driven by 14-year-old Bailey Holmesley, the orphan nephew of Mary's husband, Benjamin Holmesley. While crossing either the Laramie or North Platte River near Fort Laramie, the wagon overturned, plunging Mary and her baby into the icy water. Though both were rescued, Mary's condition worsened. On June 10th, in 1852, while the group camped about a mile west of what is now Fort Laramie and the North Platte River, Mary passed away. With no lumber available to build a coffin, Mary was wrapped in the same feather bed and laid to rest beside the road. Her daughter Laura would later recall, when Father buried Mother, he found a piece of sandstone with his jackknife. He scratched this inscription, Mary E. Holmesley died June 10, 1852, aged 28. Mary's final request to her husband was to keep their children together. Benjamin honored her dying wish. He raised their 2 daughters himself and never remarried. Father taught us to cook and sew and keep house, Laura remembered many years later. Mary Holmesley now rests in a sandy grave marked by her original headstone, encased in glass and set into a concrete pyramid. In 1925, a passing cowboy discovered the grave and informed the landowner, Clark Rice. When Rice returned to the site, he found the base of the original headstone still buried. The restored stone was set into a monument and formally dedicated on Memorial Day in 1926 in a ceremony attended by over 500 people. Despite illness, pioneers were often forced to raise from their beds to cross rivers or manage their teams. Catherine recalled one moment of desperate effort from her father.
One day 4 buffalo ran between our wagon and the one behind. Though feeble, Father seized his gun and gave chase. This imprudent act prostrated him again, and it soon became apparent his days were numbered. He was fully conscious of the fact, but could not reconcile himself to leaving his large and helpless family in such precarious circumstances. Catherine Seeger Pringle.
A testament of the thousands of wagons that cross the sandstone choke point near the North Platte River and the present town of Guernsey, Wyoming, requiring travelers to go up and over a sandstone ridge in order to continue heading west. By the time wagon travel ended along the trail, ruts 5 feet deep had been cut through this rock. Fort Casper's humble beginnings started in 1847. However, the area was the home of the Shoshone, Crow, Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute tribes. Brigham Young and his advance party arrived on June 12th in 1847, where they faced a flooding North Platte River. Young commissioned the construction of a ferry boat to ensure a safe crossing for those saints yet to travel west. On June 19th, Brigham Young named 9 men to stay behind and operate the ferry. Bentimer Bend was also called Red Butte Crossing and was the last crossing of the North Platte River. About 300 yards wide during the early years of the Oregon Trail, the next major water crossing pioneers would encounter would be the Sweetwater. Willow Springs was lush in 1847 when the first Mormon pioneer party traveled past, and Heber Kimball wrote in his diary, "This spring is about 2 feet wide and water 10 inches deep, perfectly clear, cold as ice water, and of a very good taste. There is a willow grove extending to some distance above and below it, which will answer well enough for camping purposes. The grass is good and plentiful, and it is one of the loveliest camping spots we have seen on the road." Pioneers rested here before the arduous climb up Prospect Hill, only a short distance away. A short way west of Willow Springs, Oregon Trail travelers heading for Utah, Oregon, or California came to a steep hill where the road rose 400 feet in elevation in the space of a mile. A pretty hard drag, California-bound W.S. McBride called it in 1850. He was right. Many immigrants had to double-team their oxen to make the grade, but at the top, he and all other travelers then and now are rewarded with a sweeping view of new country. Diarists remarked often on the sight and how it lifted their spirits.
From the top can be seen a vast extent of country to the south, west, and north. For about 20 or 30 miles to the south, there appears to be a tolerably level bottom over which our future road runs. Beyond this, there are vast ranges of high hills whose summits are spotted with snow, wrote William Clayton, diarist for the First Mormon Pioneer Company, June 20th, 1847.
This painting was done by William Henry Jackson, who first passed here in 1866. I can only imagine the feelings these early pioneers felt as they arrived at Independence Rock, a place where those before them etched their names in the face of the rock. Names such as Jim Bridger are among the hundreds carved into its face. Around 500,000 pioneers passed by this iconic landmark on their way west. I peel back time and imagine myself seeing the rock for the first time as I travel west in the 1850s. At last, I see it rising from the plain, Independence Rock, pale and immense against the endless Wyoming sky. For days we have followed the Sweetwater River, our wagons creaking, oxen straining, dust clinging to our skin and clothes. The rock itself was larger than I'd imagined, a round dome of gray granite scarred and shining in the sun. It seemed to grow from the earth itself as though planted there by God's old hand. When we draw near, I see that its sides are covered in names, hundreds upon hundreds of them, carved deep into the stone. Some are fresh and sharp. Others are already softened by wind and weather. Dates from years past stare back at me. 1843, 1847, 1849. Proof that others have passed this way and lived to carve their mark. Tonight we will camp by the Sweetwater, and there may be singing if spirits remain high. But for now, standing beside this great stone, I allow myself a rare and precious feeling. We have come far, and we are still moving forward. From the vantage point of Independence Rock, travelers could also see another key landmark, Devil's Gate. This narrow passage through the rocks became infamous in 1856 when the Martin Handcart Company was delayed there by severe weather storms during their trek west. My travels this day takes me to a location that brings tears to my eyes. Tears for those souls that perished at this location as they struggled to find religious freedom in the West. I wonder what memories this place has, and I try to become Martin's Cove in my mind. The wind finds me first. It slips through the narrow openings of my cove and curls along my red granite walls, carrying the dry scent of sage and dust. I am Martin's Cove, a quiet fold in the land along the Sweetwater River in Wyoming. From a distance, I do not seem like much, just a break in the rock, a shallow bowl in a vast country of sky and stone. But I remember. In the late autumn of 1856, they came to me, hundreds of weary handcart pioneers, members of the Willie and Martin companies. Snow had already begun to fall. The wind cut sharp and merciless across the plains. Their shoes were worn thin, their hands raw from pulling carts across miles of frozen ground. Hunger hollowed their faces. When they reached me, they were spent. I tried to shelter them. My granite walls broke the wind, if only a little. They huddled against me, tucking themselves close to the rock as if I were a hearth instead of a cold stone. They built small fires from scarce brush and willow. The Sweetwater, which had guided them west, now edged with ice. I watched as rescues rode in from the west, bringing wagons, food, and strength at a moment when hope was nearly gone. Some did not leave me. I hold them still, beneath the soil and grass, beneath the quiet footsteps of visitors who come now in reflection. Rest those who could not go no farther. I remember the sound of weeping carrying on the wind. I remember prayers whispered into the cold night air. I remember courage, too, quiet and fierce, burning brighter than the meager fires that flickered against my stone. Before and after that bitter season, others passed near me. Trappers, traders, immigrants chasing Oregon and California dreams. But it is the handcart companies which etched themselves deepest into my memory. Their story lingers like an echo in my sheltered hollow. Today I am still and open to the wide Wyoming sky. Grass bends where tents once stood. The Sweetwater runs on, indifferent yet constant. Visitors walk softly along my paths, reading plaques, pausing in thought. Some weep, some sing. Many stand in silence, listening for something they cannot quite name. I am Martin's Cove, rock and river, wind and witness. I cannot warm frozen hands, but I can remember. With unshakable desire to gather in the Salt Lake Valley, members of the Willie Handcart Company arrived at the Sixth Crossing, an isolated spot along the Sweetwater River, on October 19, 1856. If they had arrived in late August or early September, it might have been an ideal campsite. One early trail guide described the area as having grass in abundance up and down the creek, sagebrush and willows for fuel, but this was not summer. A bitter cold greeted the Willie Handcart Company that October morning, and after traveling only a few miles, they were halted by the season's first snowstorm.
This morning when we arose, we found several inches of snow on the ground, and is yet snowing. The cattle and people are so much reduced with short food and hard work that except we get assistance, we surely cannot move far in this snow. Brothers Willie and Elder started on horseback about 10 o'clock to search for the wagons that Wheelock reported a short distance in our advance. This morning we issued the last bread or breadstuffs in our possession. It continued snowing severely during the day. We expected Brother Willie would return this evening, but he has not come. Levi Savage Journal, 6th crossing of the Sweetwater.
Once the storm subsided, the company resumed its journey. Around noon, they were met by the first group of rescuers sent from Salt Lake Valley by the Mormon president, Brigham Young.
Such a shout as was raised in camp I never before heard. They were saviors coming to our relief. Joseph Elder, member of the Willie Handcart Company.
Although the 4 rescuers brought little food, they carried hope, bringing word that wagons loaded with flour, onions, clothing, and bedding were only a day's journey behind them. After briefly encouraging the suffering pioneers, the rescuers pushed eastward to locate the Martin Company, still 100 miles behind. On the evening of October 21st, wagons laden with precious supplies reached the Willie Company.
It was about sunset when we came in sight of the camp. Harvey Clough, Willie Handcart rescuer.
The joy that erupted upon the rescuers' arrival was overwhelming. Children danced with glee, strong men wept openly, and women embraced the rescuers with gratitude. The camp knelt together in prayer, offering heartfelt thanks to God. The donations of food, clothing, and bedding from the saints in the Salt Lake Valley would save many lives.
We had resorted to eating anything that could be chewed bark and leaves from trees. We youngsters ate the raw hide from our boots. It seemed to sustain life, and we were very thankful to get it. John Oborn, member of the Willie Handcart Company. God only can understand and realize the torture and privation, exposure and starvation that we went through. The camp at 6th Crossing, he remembered, was the most terrible experience of my life. John Oborn, member of the Willie Handcart Company.
I traveled down along an old dusty ranch road and climbed towards another historic location called Rocky Ridge. Like Martin's Cove, I can only imagine the hunger, the cold, and the exhaustion they experienced as they approached the base of Rocky Ridge with only one option left: climb, and survive. We see it today in the spring of the year with clear skies and green grass. Lives were lost during the trek to the base of the ridge. Another 13 would perish during the climb. They woke to a biting wind that cut through their thin coats like a knife. The ridge ahead, Rocky Ridge they called it, loomed in the shadows, its rocky spine slick with frost, hands raw and blistered from the wooden handcart they dragged across the plains. The snow had started falling the day before, gentle at first, then relentless, blanketing the ridge in white that made the path almost invisible. Every step felt heavier than the last. Legs trembled, boots were soaked and frozen. Families huddled close to their carts, whispering prayers, tears freezing on their cheeks. Some of the younger children slept leaning against the wooden frames, oblivious to the cold. But many cried out in pain or fear. The ridge seemed endless, each jagged stone a cruel reminder of how far they still had to go. The ascent of Rocky Ridge on October 23rd was a day that tested their endurance like no other. Captain James Willie later described it as the most disastrous day of the entire trek. The climb, a 600-foot, 3-mile stretch, often through deep snow, was grueling for travelers already weakened by hunger and fatigue. A monument has been placed at the base of Rocky Ridge to remember those that lost their lives on this most disastrous day.
We buried our dead, got up our teams, and about 9 o'clock a.m. commenced ascending the Rocky Ridge. This was a severe day. The wind blew hard and cold. The ascent was some 5 miles long, and some places steep and covered with deep snow. We became weary, sat down to rest, and some became chilled and commenced to freeze. Brothers Atwood, Woodard, and myself remained with the teams, they being perfectly loaded down with the sick and children, so thickly stacked I was fearful some would smother. About 10 or 11 o'clock in the night, we came to a creek that we did not like to attempt to cross without help, it being full of ice and freezing cold. Levi Savage Journal, entry October 23rd, 1856.
We reached camp about sundown. My husband was still sinking, and I put him to bed. Later, I put my hand on his body, when to my horror, I discovered he was dead. The next day, they placed him in a pile with 13 others because they could not dig a grave. Elizabeth Jackson, Kingsford, 1856.
Few rescuers in wagons remained with the Willie Company as the Saints continued pulling their handcarts the remaining 150 miles to Fort Bridger, where additional help awaited. These upcoming miles would prove to be the most difficult of their entire journey. We next come to another location noted for the ultimate sacrifice many early pioneers paid for a new life in the West. In the fall of 1856, the Willie Handcart Company, a large group of Mormon pioneers, struggled to what is now called Rock Creek Hollow after crossing the difficult rocky ridge. Here they camped exhausted, suffering from the cold and lack of food, where 13 members of the Willie Company were buried, with more dying the next morning. We view it today in late May, where snow is still present. Today, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints maintains Rock Creek Hollow as an historic site with monuments and markers honoring the pioneers who suffered and died there. Interpreters share the story with visitors during the summer months. The family crossed the Green River the evening before his death, Catherine remembered.
Looking where I lay helpless, Father said, "Poor child, what will become of you?" Captain Shaw found him weeping bitterly. He said his last hour had come, and his heart was filled with anguish for his family. Father was buried the next day on the banks of Green River. His coffin was made of 2 troughs dug from a tree trunk. But the next year, immigrants found his bleaching bones as the Indians had disinterred the remains. Catherine Sage Pringle, Oregon Trail pioneer.
A significant milestone reached at this location. Many travelers did not realize they had just crossed the Continental Divide at South Pass. From this point on, the waters flow westward towards the Pacific Ocean, rather than east towards the Atlantic. At an elevation of approximately 7,400 feet, the pass had long been known to Native American tribes before Americans were aware of its existence. Fur trappers became familiar with it in the early 19th century. A Scottish-born fur trader, Robert Stewart, is credited with recognizing and publishing the South Pass as a practical route through the Rocky Mountains. Another stone marker stands alongside the trail at South Pass, commemorating the first documented white woman to cross the pass. In 1836, Narcissa Whitman and Eliza Spalding, accompanied by their husbands, were part of a small missionary party traveling west to work among the Nez Perce in present-day Idaho. By the mid-1800s, thousands of pioneers were traveling west along the trail. Water was scarce in this high desert country, and dependable springs were essential. A place like Pacific Springs could mean the difference between survival and disaster. It also marked the beginning of a long, demanding stretch of travel towards the Green River. Located along the Oregon Trail in a vast sea of grass is a lone grave of Charlotte Dancy. Charlotte and Robert Dancy converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as young adults in England. After 13 years of marriage, they decided to join other saints on their journey to Zion in the Salt Lake Valley. On May 12th, in 1862, they departed for America with their 5 living children, leaving behind the graves of 2 others in England. At the time, Charlotte was expecting their 8th child. Tragically, on the night of September 20th, Charlotte gave birth prematurely. The baby, whom they named Joseph, lived only a short time. Near Pacific Springs, a grave was prepared. As a grave was being dug, word arrived that another pioneer sister, Carolyn Myers, traveled alone, had died of the fever. The grave was widened, and Charlotte, her infant son, and Sister Myers were all interned in a single resting place. Years later, a sheep herder came upon the site and regrettably disturbed the grave. He found a string of blue beads, which were later identified as a necklace Robert had placed around Charlotte's neck before her burial. In time, a monument and protective fence was installed at the site and dedicated by more than 80 members of the Dancy family. The eldest family member present at the dedication was Sarah Ann Dancy, Charlotte's last surviving child. She had been only 4 years old when she witnessed her mother's burial 77 years earlier. Engraved on the headstone, a verse from the beloved Latter-day Saint hymn, "Come, Come, Ye Saints," written by William Clayton in 1846 during the pioneer trek from Nauvoo to winter quarters, reads, "And should we die before our journey's through, happy day, all is well. We then are free from toil and sorrow too. With the just we shall dwell. But if our lives are spared again to see the saints their rest obtained, oh how we'll make the chorus swell. All is well, all is well." The Parting of the Ways was a major junction on the Oregon Trail in western Wyoming near present-day South Pass. It marked the place where immigrants had to choose between staying on the established Oregon Trail towards Fort Hall or taking the shorter but riskier Sublette Cutoff across the high desert. The main Oregon Trail route developed from earlier fur trade paths used by trappers and traders. By the early 1840s, large wagon companies began crossing Wyoming on their way to Oregon's Willamette Valley.
By taking this trail, the Sublette Cutoff, 2.5 days travel may be saved. But in the 40 miles between Big Sandy and Green River, there is no water and but little grass. Joe Palmer, July 20th, 1845.
The cutoff shortened the distance by roughly 45 or 50 miles, but required crossing about 40 miles of dry desert without dependable water, eliminating the need to pass through Fort Hall in present-day Idaho. This created a true decision point on the trail. Travelers heading west had a choice: turning right heading for Fort Hall or turn left and take the Sublette Cutoff. During the California Gold Rush, tens of thousands of immigrants poured westward. The pressure to move quickly made the Sublette Cutoff especially attractive. By July 25, 1849, a unique communication system had been developed at this important junction. Traveling pioneers left messages for those following behind.
At the forks of the regular road and where Sublette's Cutoff leaves, bypassing Fort Bridger, I saw some 40 or 50 notes stuck up in forked sticks with directions and news from those in advance to acquaintances behind. None, however, from anyone I knew. Elijah Perkins, July 25th, 1849.
The Parting of the Ways was more than a navigational choice. It was often an emotional one. Many immigrants said tearful goodbyes to friends at this point, knowing they may never meet again. By the 1860s, the Pony Express and the Overland Stage used portion of the trail system. With the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, wagon immigration declined, and so did the importance of the Parting of the Ways. it became a quiet stretch of Wyoming sagebrush once more. As I leave the parting of the ways behind me, I imagine what the early pioneers were thinking, experiencing along this dusty trail towards the Big Sandy River. My thoughts go back in time. We reached Big Sandy after several days of hard travel from the South Pass. The land here is wide and empty beyond description, rolling hills of sage and dust, with scarcely a tree in sight. The wind seldom rests. It drives the sand against our faces and fills our mouths and eyes until we can scarcely see. The river itself is a curious thing. In places it runs shallow and muddy, hardly deserving the name. The banks are soft and treacherous, and more than one wagon ahead of us has sunk to its hubs while attempting to cross. Our oxen strain mightily, their hooves slipping in the sand as the men shout and push at the wheels. Water is never as plentiful as we hope. The Big Sandy promises relief, yet its flow is uncertain. Some stretches are little more than stagnant pools, and we must search carefully for a place fit for the animals to drink. We guard them closely at night, for the grass is sparse, and they wander in search of better grazing. Camp this evening was quiet. The women cooked what little we could spare, beans and a bit of salt pork, while the men checked the wagons for loose bolts and cracked spokes. The children are weary of the dust and ask when we shall see Oregon. I have no answer. Though this country feels desolate, we are told that the Green River lies ahead, and beyond it, better water and grass. So we press on, trusting in God and in our sturdy teams, hoping the Big Sandy will soon be behind us. Historian Stanley Vestal described the fort as an 8-foot stockade with a corral adjoining on the north. Within the stockade stood 4 log cabins with flat dirt roofs. One housed Bridger's forge and carpenter's bench. Another served as his store. The third was his family's living quarters, and the fourth belonged to his partner. In a letter dated December 1843, Bridger wrote to Pierre Chardou Jr.,
I have established a small fort with a blacksmith shop and a supply of iron in the road of emigrants on Black Fork of Green River, which promises fairly.
On July 7, 1847, Orson Pratt, a prominent member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was among the first group of Mormon pioneers to arrive at the fort. Tensions soon developed between Bridger and the newly arrived settlers. By 1853, conflict escalated when a Mormon militia was dispatched to arrest Bridger on charges of illegally selling alcohol and firearms to Native Americans, actions that violated federal law. On November 18, 1857, Bridger leased his lands to the United States government. The fort was subsequently used by Colonel Albert Sidney Johnson and his forces during the Utah War. The same year as relations between the federal government and the Latter-day Saints further deteriorated, church members set fire to the fort's buildings to prevent their use by the U.S. Army. During the late 1860s and 1870s, the Army made major improvements to the fort. Although it was first abandoned in 1878, Fort Bridger was briefly reoccupied 2 years later and was decommissioned for good in 1890, with Wyoming's admission as a U.S. state. My journey through time ends here at Fort Bridger in the southwestern part of Wyoming. What a privilege it has been to travel the path where so many went before me, to feel the same wind on my face and walk the same ground where countless immigrants struggled, suffered, and in some cases gave their lives in search of a new beginning in the West. Life along the trail was not easy. At times it pushed those traveling to their utmost limits. Yet for many, it offered the promise of a new life. For others, however, it marked the beginning of the end of a way of life for the people who long called this land home along the Oregon Trail. My story ends with a diary entry written by a young pioneer named Catherine Sage.
As we continued west, I recall the nights and mornings were very cold, and Mother took cold from the exposure. With camp fever and a sore throat, she fought bravely, but became delirious near Fort Bridger. We traveled a rough road the day she died, and she moaned fearfully all the time. Her last words were, "Oh, Henry, if you only knew how we have suffered." Catherine Sage Pringle, Oregon Trail Pioneer.
If you enjoyed this journey as much as I have, please subscribe to my channel and click like. Your support helps me continue sharing and preserving the stories of the trails that carry so many toward their dream of a better life.